And it was just a question of finding somebody to replace CLT. The salary and benefits for working for CLT are minuscule. We have never found anybody that qualified to do the job that was willing to work for what we were paid, what we could offer. So it's the end of the line here with me. And then I worked, as Paul said, we've been working together since 2019 on TCI and right up to the CLT tax cap refund that should be completed today. I understand the last check should be going out today. And at any rate, I was impressed with their operation. I knew Paul for years before, and I thought this is the perfect opportunity for me. I can pass this off to MassFiscal with confidence that it can continue going on. And after the election, I talked to Paul about it, and here we are, passing the torch on to the new generation. CLT started in 1974 by Edward F. King, not to be confused with Edward J. King, who became governor. Edward F. King was a businessman who opposed the fourth graduated income tax that was being proposed. And he put together CLT, a fledgling organization, if ever there was one, and they took on the campaign to oppose it and defeated it. A couple of years later, in 1979, the CLT and its board of directors come up with the idea of a property tax limit. Proposition 13 in California, which was the initial property tax limitation that started the movement, had just passed. And we took a lot of the ideas from that and went forward with what became Proposition 2.5. As usual, that's when we found out who our enemies were. And they've remained ever since. Primarily the Massachusetts Teachers Association is behind everything, or opposed to everything we've ever proposed, and proposed everything we've ever opposed ourselves. After that, after Proposition 2.5 passed, that was to limit municipal tax increases. CLT come up with the idea of limiting state tax increases, putting a cap on revenues that the state can take in. And that's when we came up with the tax cap limitation and a refund if it exceeds it. It only kicked in once for a small amount the following year, 1987, until this year. And this year it kicked in big time, which proves it worked. Through all the years that it never kicked in, there was no problems. But when the revenue exceeded expectations by so much, it kicked in and returned $3 billion to the taxpayers. It worked as designed. Over the years, we've done so many different petition drives for legislative pay raise repeals, term limits, the Dukakis surtax repeal, that was in 86 as well. We've defeated the graduate income tax twice. We fought the Dukakis fee increases and settled out of court with the Weldon administration, and they adjusted fees to cost no more than the cost of providing the service. There's a multitude of issues over the last 48 years that most people aren't even aware of. Some of them are put in the news release that I sent out last night to everybody. We've saved over the decades, we've saved taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. This last $3 billion is only the latest, and it's our goodbye present to the taxpayers. We're hoping that these laws will continue to be respected. I know every year Proposition 2.5 comes under a stealth attack from one direction or another, always trying to weaken it, trying to water it down. That's been a very underreported part of what CLT does, is prevents bad tax increases, bad tax policy. The most recent one was in the 2018 when the legislature tried to create what they call community benefit districts to end run Proposition 2.5. It would have allowed municipalities to set up neighborhood districts, which would be empowered to raise and charge their own property taxes on top of the municipal property tax. We were able to defeat that. It was snuck into an economic development bill. We got it removed. So there's a lot of things CLT did defensively, preventing tax increases, as well as the more publicized issues like cutting taxes, like Prop 2.5, the tax cap refund. So it's time for CLT to close down. It's time for me to take my leave. And I'm just thrilled that we have somebody to pass the torch on to. And I am confident that Paul and his team at MassFiscal are going to be able to hold the line as CLT has done for almost half a century. If anybody's got any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them for you.
Any reporters, just unmute yourself if you have any questions.
Yeah, this is Bruce Moe. I guess I have a question, Chip. Just to be clear, you're sort of giving your blessing to MassFiscal. It's not a merger of the organizations. It's no official merger or connection. It's just you're sort of saying they can take over what you've been doing.
Well, Bruce, first I want to thank you for discovering Chapter 62F. Your story was what broke the news and got it out there, and I've been meaning to call you and thank you for that. Now that this is to answer your question, CLT is officially shutting down. I'm in the process of doing that now, canceling all the subscriptions and services and closing the bank accounts and all that sort of stuff. CLT will be closed down. We're just passing on the mission to MassFiscal.
And Chip, do you want to share with Bruce how you've notified your members too, and so this way your members have it up?
We did a mailing to our members recommending that they join MassFiscal and keep the fight going, keep the mission on. As you saw in the news release, and here we are. We're announcing it pretty much statewide that everybody now turn their support to MassFiscal. Those who supported CLT, members of CLT, the fight goes on. CLT's out of the fight for now, but the fight goes on.
Chip, this is Avi Nelson. First of all, congratulations on all that you have accomplished, and Paul, best wishes for the future. A question, Chip, are you going to remain active at all? I mean, I know you're not going to be executive director or anything like that, but are you going to be active at all with MassFiscal in whatever upcoming projects they undertake?
I'll just say, Avi, Chip is always welcome to be as involved as he wants to be, balancing that with whatever he wants to do in the future. But, he's always welcome to give me a call, and I plan to give him a call quite a bit in the future when things pop up. So from my perspective, the invitation is always open for him.
Yeah, and the same thing here. I'll always be available any way I can with my CLT institutional memory and my experiences and stuff. And I told Paul before, anytime I can help, feel free to call. But on a a working basis, no, I'm retired.
Chip, are you suffering from any withdrawal symptoms for not having the intensity of the effort for CLT?
That's an interesting question. I have no free time. I have had no free time since the year before Barbara died, 2015. I work literally 12, 16, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I am so used to making excuses for having no social life. A friend of mine down here, he had an extra ticket to the local college basketball game a couple weekends ago, and he called me up, asked me if I wanted to go. And my knee-jerk reaction was to tell him, no, I'm too busy. And then it hit me. I can go. and I actually went out and had a good time for myself. First time in a long time. So I'm working for CLT. It's never been a job. It's been a vocation. It's been a life. It was the same thing with Barbara. It was the same thing with Chip Faulkner. Bear in mind, all three of us, none of us were married, none of us had dependents, none of us had children, and none of us had a life outside of CLT. We just worked all the time. And getting used to that is going to be strange. I'm still wrestling with it every time every time my mind tells me I've got something to do, I have to argue with my mind and tell it, no, I don't. No, I don't. Not anymore. That's going to take a while to adapt to.
Chip, it's Bruce Moll again. How many members do you have? How many did you send that message to?
About 1,500.
And Paul, how many do you have members at MassFiscal? I don't know. I don't really know.
Yeah, anyone that donates instantly becomes a member. And certainly we have a lot of supporters, people who may not donate, who interact with our call to actions, who engage on social media, engage their lawmakers. So there's various levels. And I think also with Chip's group, some of his members may sign up, become a supporter, and then watch us, and then maybe become a member down the road. And we hope to earn their confidence and trust.
I would expect that CLT members will be transferring their support to MassFiscal, because these are people who've been in the trenches for decades, and they're not going to stop fighting. And they're going to need someplace to go. And I've recommended strongly that they move their support to MassFiscal. It's the only game in town left in Massachusetts.
Paul, it's Avi Nelson again. What projects do you have underway now or are in the offing for the near future for MassFiscal?
Hi, Avi. It's good to meet you on Zoom. I've heard a lot about you from Barbara and the two Chips, and just from members over the years. But to answer your question, that's twofold. One is, what can we anticipate? And then what will the legislature and the governor-elect throw in our lap? We're always trying to be flexible for the latter. But for what we can anticipate, one of the biggest things is protecting those three laws that CLT fought for so hard, which I outlined. The other thing is that we have to remember that Governor-elect Maura Healey is going to have to deal with the economic fallout of question 1 in about 16 days before she's even inaugurated. The fallout of question 1 doesn't wait for inaugurations. It doesn't wait for staffing. It's happening on January 1st. And the governor-elect made several promises at her 2 debates to cut taxes. So we're going to hold her accountable to what we hope is broad tax cuts. We're not in the position as a state anymore to do any more tinkering around the edges. We can't do targeted tax relief. We need broad tax cuts. And that means looking at the income tax, doing away with the state tax, doing away with the inventory tax, doing everything we can to reduce property taxes. And this isn't just me saying this. This is the Tax Foundation from Washington, D.C. They've been warning Massachusetts for years. If you adopt question 1, you will hit rock bottom in the national standings. You'll essentially go from number 34th best state in the country to about 46, 47. States around the country are reducing or eliminating taxes. There's about 12 that have done it during the pandemic. Our state's doing the opposite. So right off the bat, we know we're going to hold the governor-elect accountable. We're going to push her really hard to implement tax cuts, getting rid of taxes altogether. And then you got the Speaker and the Senate President who spoke out publicly in support of doing something with the estate tax. We're the worst state in the entire country for the estate tax. Even California, who we're often compared to now, doesn't even have an estate tax. Anyone that has assets over $1 million in Massachusetts, if you hit that number, all of your assets from 0 to 1 million get hit with that estate tax. There are a lot of reasons why people are fleeing our state, and that's one of the biggest ones. So we need to get rid of that tax altogether, and we will push the Speaker and the Senate President to get rid of it. Any tinkering on that tax means nothing. It's not going to help because question 1 passed. So those are just some of the things we know off the bat. We'll keep an eye out for TCI if that comes up again, but we hope it won't. And then there's just non-tax policies that fall in our lap, like 2 years ago, ranked choice voting. These are things that fall into our mission scope, but may not be tax policy that we will continue to advocate for or against.
And I think going forward, one of the biggest things, one of the most important things is to protect Proposition 2.5. That's why I am so thrilled that there's another organization in Massachusetts that I can hand CLT off to. Barbara, about a week before she passed away, she and I were talking, and she asked me, she was worried about what was going to happen to CLT. Never mind that she's dying. She's worried about what's going to happen to CLT. And she asked me if I was going to keep it going. Her biggest concern was Proposition 2.5 and what would happen to seniors on fixed incomes if 2.5 was ever taken away. And I told her I plan to keep CLT going with the caveat, as long as humanly possible. I'll never forget those words. And she said that, that's all she could ask for. And that's why I've kept it going. In 2018, when I tried to shut it down, I had talked out of it by the members. I was shutting it down then because we were getting less and less financial support, to the point where I was wondering why I was killing myself if so few people cared. And after I moved, like I said, I got buried with, while in the process, I was buried by phone calls and emails and everything, by members pleading with me not to abandon them. You got a computer, you got a phone, you can do it from anywhere you go. So I gave it another chance. It worked. I decided, as long as humanly possible hadn't been reached yet. And I've kept CLT going for another 4 years since then. Proposition 2.5 was the last concern in Barbara's life, preserving and protecting it. And this is what I've done primarily for the last 4 years. And this is an ongoing mission. This is not going to end. Just last week in Commonwealth Magazine, there was a column, what was his name? Evan Horowitz, calling for re-examining Proposition 2.5, perhaps getting rid of it. I mean, it's already begun. Without CLT, I don't know what happens. With MassFiscal, I'm confident it can be protected. And that's why I'm comfortable actually shutting down CLT and taking my leave and hoping that I'm confident the CLT Proposition 2.5 will remain. That's probably the most important ballot question that CLT ever accomplished. And if that goes away, I don't know what happens to the taxpayers of Massachusetts. None of them will be able to live there any longer.
Paul, how big a staff do you have, or how many people make up MassFiscal?
We started 10 years ago. I was the first staff person. In between what we call the Alliance, we have 3 different nonprofits that work together, but that are independent. There's 6 staffers, including myself. But to Chip's point with Prop 2.5, the Tax Foundation, after question 1 passed, had warned Massachusetts that property taxes in Mass are actually the 5th highest in the entire country. And that was one of the areas they warned the state that you must address. So just imagine how bad we would be if it wasn't for Prop 2.5. And that's just another reason why we have to protect Prop 2.5. In addition to the seniors who can't afford it, there's a lot of middle-class people in the state who could not afford it overnight if that is watered down or eliminated. And that's Prop 2.5 is actually, according to the Tax Foundation, one of the premier taxpayer protection laws in the entire country, like ever. They have a whole, I think, a web page dedicated to Prop 2.5. It's a model for other states to adopt. So it's quite an accomplishment that Chip, Barbara, and other Chip got it passed. It's a blessing for Massachusetts that we have it. And it's, it's MassFiscal's job to continue to protect it as long as we can. Any other questions from media folks? No other questions, Chip. I know I think you have at least 1 or 2 former or current members on, and if they want to ask you any questions or any parting words, they're more than welcome to. And if not, we'll wrap it up in a couple minutes. All right, Chip, I think you left him speechless. Well, I look forward to continue working with you, Chip, and I hope you enjoy some of your retirement. I think it's no one will doubt you're ending on a very high note, and your mission and CLTs has been accomplished. And as long as I'm involved with MassFiscal, which I plan to be for a long time, we will continue to protect the legacy that you, Barbara, and Chip gave Massachusetts taxpayers. And I look forward to continue working with you as much as you can.
Well, one thing I'd like to add, I'd be remiss if I didn't, is I'm shocked at Governor Baker withdrawing his pardon for Gerald Amaral. This was Barbara's dying wish. In her final column published posthumously, her final sentence in her final paragraph called for Charlie Baker to keep his promise and pardon Gerald Amaral. I was thrilled to see that he did that a couple of weeks ago. 8 years late, but better late than never. I was shocked to read yesterday that he withdrew his pardon. Shame on him. Shame on him.
Chip, you say that, but he says he did it because he didn't have the votes. You think he should have just gone ahead anyway?
Bruce, how many times has he had the votes for anything, and yet he's gone ahead with it? He should have called their bluff or put the governor's council on record, not blinked first.
Yeah, Bruce, how many times has Governor Baker proposed legislation or signed something that he knew was going to be overridden by the legislature this so overwhelmingly of the other party, but he put a signature on the page, and if the override came or the legislature wouldn't do it, yes, he lived with it.
There was no reason why he withdrew that, except cowardice.
All right, Jeff, we're a minute over 11. Do you want to share with Bruce or with Grace or anyone else how people can get in touch with you? Maybe your contact info?
Was that me?
Yeah, you. Your Chip at chipford.com, right?
Yeah, that's my private email address, chipford@chipford.com. And the number remained the same, 781-639-9709.
Well, thank you, Chip.
Hey, could I ask one last question, Chip, about the Emerald thing? I'm one of the old geezers too, so I remember a lot of this stuff, but I don't, it's a little fuzzy to me. Did Barbara say Baker promised her, or what? What was the promise?
He told Gerald Amwell before, when he was running for governor the first time, that one of the first orders of business would be reviewing his file and pardoning him if it was appropriate. And he lived up to that a couple of weeks ago. That he changed his mind. It's just shocking.
Got it. Okay.
And Barbara had talked to him. Barbara had worked with acting Governor Jane Swift on getting Joe released some years back. If you go to the CLT website, at the bottom of the whole page is a whole section on Emerald and CLT's involvement. In fact, we hired Gerald when he got released, and he worked on a Proposition 2.5 study with us in 2005. That's on the CLT website as well. And I mean, this was, it was stunning that it took 8 years. We expected it sooner than that. Maybe there were political reasons Charlie held off. That he did it in his final weeks was, like I said, better late than never, but he did it. That he withdrew it is inexplicable.
Thanks, Chip.
All right, well, thank you, Chip, once again. We're a little bit over 11, so I definitely want to be mindful of everyone's time. And thank you for all that you've done.
It's been a hell of a ride.
On that note, we'll stop the Zoom. Thank you again. See you all.